All right, it's recording now. I guess I'll get ready in a few seconds to
Alright.
start. Yep. Hi, everyone. How are things? Well, I have brass. I'm going to start that whole thing again. Sorry. How's it going, everyone? So today I've got Baron von Brass here. He had me on his YouTube channel for a really cool chat interview sort of thing, and now I'm having him back on mine. So yeah, how's it going? Should I just call you Brass, Mr. Brass? It's kind of weird calling you Mr. Brass because we're like friends and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, you can call me Brass or I mean, that's typically what I go by on Twitter and stuff.
Right.
Um,
But how are you?
yeah, I'm doing okay. Um, you can also just call me Derek. That's my real government name.
Okay, government name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah. So I remember I remember on Twitter you had you had said you wanted to discuss with me about how this notion of sacrifice isn't really that uncommon in the like how I had said that this notion of sacrifice isn't that uncommon in the West, and I posted a link about how in medieval times people would have these very egregious acts of self harm to communicate their communicating their sacrificial nature.
Right. Like it's not just the West. There's like other like tribes. There's some prehistoric acts. What else? There's some African, I think it was, and there was some Asian ones, Chinese, Native American. All the world over.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Basically, reason I was wanting to talk to you about this one because you know that's the basis by which we things like circumcision is justified, male genital mutilation is justified, and I just can't help but fail to detach the idea that humanity has had this big love affair with things like the mortification of the flesh and basically ascetics and self-debasement in the pursuit of attaining that higher state of being, sort of. So I'd love to exchange some ideas on that.
Mhm. Yeah. I mean, I know at least in terms of Christianity, because that's more my strong suit of knowing things.
Hmm.
Um, I know for Christianity is sort of what made it sort of like as popular as it is in the West, at least.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure there's probably pagan cultures out there or some more Asian culture that engage in it. But at least in the West, that's where it really comes from because that's sort of the main impetus of like the entire religion.
Yeah. Well, in the West, it seems like the big transition when it came to the West and things like Judeo-Christianity is that it became a virtue to voluntarily sacrifice yourself as opposed to it being a more tribalistic kind of forced on you kind of a thing. Or, in some other cases, like just sacrificing others to gain some kind of parasitic end or something like that. I think the West is where, sacrifice for its own sake was seen as virtuous, I suppose. So do you have any arguments against that, or?
No, not really. I mean, like in many ancient cultures, I mean, people sacrificed themselves, sure, but it was more like something that was forced upon them, and it was never really seen so much as a good in of itself as it was just like a necessity,
Hmm.
or even in some cases a form of humiliation.
Right. It's like,
Um,
yeah, it's kind of weird. I'm thinking some notions of humility, and at the same time, I'm thinking humiliation, as you just said. I wonder if they're more interconnected than we'd like to admit.
mhm. Well, I know, like, when, like, the big thing with Christianity where it gets its notion of, like, when there's power in victimhood, it, of course, comes from the crucifixion. And, like, when it was originally done to Jesus, it was supposed to be, like, one of the most humiliating, like,
Right.
shameful things you could ever go through.
Yeah.
And, and it's so many Christians, in order to sort of face the cognitive dissonance that goes across the eyes of saying, I'm worshiping this man that was humiliated, they had to sort of come up with a way of saying, all right, well, he faced this humiliating death, but something good came out of it.
So
Um,
so that's something uh, I postulated once that that was my primary criticism of Christianity. It's that here we have, the symbol of the cross, a torture device for all practical purposes, right?
yeah,
And and what it was that, I don't like the fact that the very idol that I'm supposed to, well, idolize, I suppose, and see as basically like the highest manifestation of value and example of being, and Christianity to me is be like Christ,
yeah,
and and that's what you're wanting to kind of be like, is to be sacrificial, maybe, and even proverbially, am I saying that right?
yeah, verbally.
Proverbially, yeah. I don't know. Maybe I'm saying that completely wrong, but but have yourself nailed to the cross and be of service that way by the mortification of your flesh. And I got completely dogpiled on it by some theists, and yeah, it's like, you're missing the whole point of this thing. It's because we don't, Jesus did that, so we don't have to do this all the time. Well, first off, I don't like the fact that it had to happen to Jesus, and I don't like the fact that this is something that he had to go through, right?
Yeah,
And second of all, I don't think it's helped. It's like, people still uh, want. They seem to idolize mutilated flesh, like, we see battle scars as something kind of attractive because he's had himself had his flesh mortified in battle and war and such. And so you kind of get what I'm saying, though, right?
yeah. I mean, it wasn't just the crucifixion that Jews went through. I mean, back then, before you got crucified, you would be like beaten within an inch of your life.
Hmm.
Um, and I've even heard that some people just straight up died from that, because that's how brutal it would be. Um, but so I mean, you get you get whipped in front of everybody to the point where you're basically just covered in blood and bruises, and you're humiliated in front of everybody.
Hmm.
And then, and only then, after that, then you get dragged into the Colosseum, and then you're crucified. Then it's a slow process because you don't die immediately. Like for the most part, when you're crucified, it's usually it takes a period of days.
Right. So why is it that we think this is virtuous?
I think it's more like, at least in biblical times, like for Jesus, he said like there's no greater love than dying for one's friends.
Hmm.
And so I think that's how many Christians took it, where they said, well, Jesus basically he stood for his beliefs and he was willing to, give his life for his friends, and that's what makes it a good thing that happened.
Right. Well, I mean, we would probably, so to speak, die for our own loved ones and for our values and for all the things we care about, and for our freedoms and so forth. But the thing that sticks with me in my craw, so to speak, is I'm not in it to die. I'd rather live and see these virtues and values defended to the end. But the death is more of a a tragic side effect of having done that. So I have a problem with it being like the virtue in itself.
Yeah.
Right.
Um,
But
and yeah. Well, I mean, I also think that it does come with its own destructive side to it because, I mean, like I said, victimhood culture really does come from Christianity.
can you speak
Uh,
more on that?
I mean, well, it's from Christianity that you get the notion that being a victim, at least in the social sense, can be a good thing.
Mm,
And, like I said, in the Middle Ages, you would see people that, like, sometimes they would, like, try to self crucify themselves and they would fast themselves basically half to death, all in this grandiose effort to show, hey, look, I'm a victim.
right.
um, look at me, and in order to get like I would assume to get brownie points for what you're doing to yourself.
That's
You
the
know,
way I've kind of seen it. And if I said it, I get, like I said, I get dogpiled and stuff like that. And that's not what it's all about. But I can't help but agree with you in those areas because we're talking about like seeking out that kind of like the first thing that sticks in my mind right now is Passion of the Christ, the movie.
yeah, Mel
Yeah, I
Gibson.
mean, yeah, it was pretty far back now. Boy, do we feel old. But yeah, it was just like a step-by-step display of everything that was happening to him, to Christ, and it's like this like it's really hard to kind of parse anything good to come of this. It's like, do you get what I'm saying here?
Yeah, I get what you're saying, and it is very hard to really get to see, like, even from my own perspective, that I mean, it's one thing where I can, like, it's also comes with the whole notion of redemptive suffering where you're sort of seeing, like, you're saying, well, my suffering may be bad, but look at Christ.
Hmm.
And I do think sometimes I can get to ignore, like, what you're actually going through, or to
Right.
minimize what you're going through.
Hmm.
Um, but more so, I think it's just, I mean, like I said, it comes down to a matter of this glorification of self harm for the sake of, for the supposed sake of society.
Yeah. Like one thing that I'm reminded of immediately was this. There was just something that was trending on Gab because I know who uses Gab anymore, but it was something I saw when I was on there. It was like this series of videos or something. I think it was an articles or a series of videos by this guy that what he called sacrificial living, basically kind of doing everything in a very uh, ascetic sort of self-debasing kind of way, including well, I mean, and they're usually like small things like unbearably cold showers and what have you. But I didn't go into too much detail looking into it. But it was just stuff like that. It's this kind of glorification of the fact that you're denying yourself uh, a reasonable comfort and I would say health. It's like like as if this is the virtuous way to live. So I think I have a point when I say that Western society has a lot of uh, self mortification worship, as if that's what's going to get, as you said, the brownie points. And we're not allowed to shall we say, see virtue and see the good in somebody being intact and unsacrificed in the whole physical sense,
Hmm.
right? And one other thing that I kind of want to touch on when it comes to the Christ thing is that, or the Christianity thing is see there's this analogy that I keep on hearing about the circumcision of the heart. You've heard of that, right?
Yeah, I've heard of that.
Yeah. Basically, the idea is that Christianity doesn't condone actual genital mutilation because we already had this circumcision of the heart, uh, or it could be alternatively that Christ was the last sacrifice, so we don't need to do this anymore. But that being said, I still don't like the symbolism because we're still talking about ripping away the symbolic uh, outer flesh of something with the aim of dulling its senses, maybe to kind of deny the worldly pleasures, that sort of thing. Um, I mean, this feels like something that I'm again going to be dogpiled on. That's not what it's all about. But what if it is? I mean, if it is, you still. I mean, you guys seem to be okay with it, at least philosophically.
Yeah. Well, even in some cases where we do sort of recognize that there are times, like when we do sacrifice ourselves, we never really also notice that it's a. I mean, we notice that when, like, let's say, I remember on the last time when you came on my show, we talked about, like, say, the example of a guy, um, let's say, oh yeah, where he saves his child's life by pushing them out of the way when
Hmm.
a speeding car is coming towards them.
Yeah.
Now we know that uh, the guy doing that, like, we would say that that was a good thing that he saved his son's life, but we also know that it's a tragic thing overall.
Right. If he were to die or become horribly injured.
Yeah.
Right.
So
But yeah, go ahead. Sorry, I'll let you finish your thought.
yeah, I think we will recognize that it's at best a sort of a trade-off situation where you're essentially trading off a bit of your pleasure for or your life for say your son's life in that situation. We don't really view it as so much of a good thing as we do as a sort of, oh well, this is a hard situation and we're just making the, like, the a more instinctual preservation sort of sense. It's not really good or bad. It's just more or less sort of an instinct that we have.
It's more like, well, to hear people kind of praise on the men who uh, risk their lives to save whoever and get themselves possibly damaged or even actually get themselves killed. Those are the ones that get the most praise, which kind of bothers me. I really do end up processing as if um, uh, the deaths, are the things that make it wonderful. It's like I don't know if you. I don't think I knew you when we were when this was the subject at the time, but there was this boy that had to save his younger sister from from a maniacal dog and got mauled by the dog, right? And there was this whole photo of him, his face being completely scarred and stuff. And everybody, like celebrities and everybody, was saying that now you are a real man. Like this. This is a great thing, and everybody's calling him a Chad or something like that. You know, so that is the basis by which men are constantly praised, and that bothers me. You kind of know what I'm talking about, which
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, I get what you're saying. Um, like I said, we would always notice it that that a lot of things that men do, it's more of on an instinctual level, and it's also a bit of social programming.
Well, can you explain the instinctual then? I mean, I think it's more social programming than we'd like to admit. I know we've probably been
It's
in this territory before, but
instinctual in the sense of like how our body tends to want to carry out our genes, and like I do think it's a bit of a what's the word? I think it more has to do with how, when it comes to the instinctual level, like how, let's say, for example, we eat and stuff because, partially because it's conducive to our survival. And a thing that it's in our sort of mind that we want to care about our legacy. And so often we'll save our loved ones in sort of in an instinctual sense in order to let us know that our legacy is being carried on if we're not there.
mm-hmm.
I think that's part of it. Like that would be part of why I don't say that would be on a sort of a conscious level. I don't think we on a conscious level program that sort of thing. I think it's more that what's the word? I think it's more that subconsciously we care about those sort of things, and our society does tell us that we should care about those things, so it reinforces it. And so that more lets us go towards those actions.
Interesting. So the thing, so I mean, I get what you're saying. Though, like say for instance, the point I was making was that say somebody could save the lives of somebody like in the moment, right? But say he kind of came out of that completely unscathed because he did it in the most efficient way, in the fastest way, the most in a way that he didn't have to kind of go ahead and emulate himself for doing so. I don't know if that's going to get enough traction in terms of praise. I think the more scars he gets, the more praise he gets. Do you agree?
Yeah, I would say so. Like at least in modern society, like the more damage that you take for an action, the more people seem to praise it.
Mm-hmm. Right. And I
So
think that's tragic.
it does, in a way. It does seem tragic.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Right. So, why don't we talk about some of the examples on that article that you had that inspired this whole thing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I remember I have to look into it a little bit more. Do you have it up?
Yeah, I got it up. I can even send you the link via the chat here. Yeah.
All right. Let's see. I got it.
Yeah. Why
And
don't we go down the list starting with number 10?
yeah, the pillar dwelling is number 10.
Right. So you bind one's feet, and I'm still confused. What's exactly happening here? It's kind of just crouching on it and just just completely staying on it, sitting on it on his knees. Is that right?
I think that's something like where it's going, and he's letting himself be basically, yes. Someone he crouched on a 18-inch slab atop a pillar for at least 37 years, and his feet were bound in place so he couldn't move positions,
Mm-hmm.
and it strained his bones to the point where like his bones bulged from beneath his skin, and he spent most of the day bowing and rising repeatedly, and it caused dislocations in his vertebrae.
Wow.
So, and eventually his belly burst open from standing for so long.
His body burst open
Yeah.
just from being stationary like that.
Well, that and the fact that he bound himself together and he was allowing birds and everything to chew at him.
Okay. Oh, his belly burst. Sorry, I thought you said body.
Yeah, his belly burst.
Wow.
And he did that for a long, long time.
And
And
this is for, I guess, so this is 5th century Syrian. So, but it is a, is it Judeo-Christian?
no.
No, it's not. Okay.
Well, I mean, I'm not a Christian. I This guy was. He was a
Yeah, that's
saint.
what I was asking. Yeah.
Yeah, this guy was. He was called a. He was a Syrian saint,
Mm-hmm.
and he was actually called the. Like he actually became so popular for doing this that he became like he created the whole phrase of pillar dweller,
Mm.
and like basically the whole notion was is that you're confining yourself to a tiny space for extended periods of time.
Mm.
And this would obviously over time cause a lot of disfigurement and a lot of hardships, to say the least.
I'm just it's hard to form the words as to why somebody would do this. I mean, yeah, I mean, I get what they're trying to do. It's trying to get closer to that enlightened state, I suppose.
Yeah.
But you know, the fact that enlightenment has to be so tied into this sort of self-imposed disfigurement, and the fact that he was popular for it,
Mhm.
I don't know. I just think that that's a very sick take uh,
And
on enlightenment.
yeah, it really can. It
I'll
really,
edit that part out.
yeah, it really can be. I mean, like I said, we tend to so in modern day we are all about how, oh, look at victim culture, and we say it like it's a new thing,
Hmm.
but it's not really.
It isn't. Yeah.
It's been around for centuries at the very least, and maybe even a millennia.
Right.
um so I mean, so it's not nothing. The only reason why we think of it as new is because, like, back then, news, it took a while for news to spread because it's not like you had internet,
Hmm.
or you didn't have phones or any other means of communication that where you can just get out information for a long time.
Right.
I mean, in order for any information to come by, for one, it would have to be something that really stuck with people, and two, you would have to usually people would have to travel on foot by like horseback,
Hmm.
and on foot or by horseback to go to these lands, and they would have to tell someone and they would hope that the word would spread around, or maybe they would have to write a letter and send it by horseback and hope that the word gets around to people. So back then you could be really more separated from the sufferings of other people because you were more like in tune with your own village and your own tribe than you were other people's.
Right.
Whereas now, like if a person stubs their toe in Russia, everyone from Russia to Florida will know about it because it's simply because that person will go on Facebook, Twitter, or whatever and say, "Oh, I stubbed my toe," and it'll become a viral sensation.
Right.
So we're more connected to the information than other people were. So it feels new to us when it really isn't.
Right. I think I'm actually wondering if it has to do with the fact that it's a victimhood that we don't of the other side than your own. So it looks kind of that much more stupid, and maybe both sides are accusing each other of being victims all the time. I think, I wonder if that has something to do with it.
Yeah, I think it is also that. But I mean, like in the West, we're a very Christian influenced land.
Hmm.
And that's just a big part of Christianity, at least how it's gone about, where you do make a big show of like how much you're willing to sacrifice for other people,
Right.
and you're it's more about, you're trying to make a point. Even in many places like in more Muslim countries, this stuff seems sort of foreign.
Hmm.
Where, I mean, I'm sure there's probably some people that do something like it.
Right.
For the most part, it's not really as glorified.
Yeah. I think I see your point there. Right. A lot of kind of shame and like honor concerns. I think like know honor killings being a way of kind of saving face almost. So there's it's so yeah, it's not glorified. It's just kind of practiced in its own way, I think. But I think you're right. It's not as glorified.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and even in places that are more honor based, like I believe in more Asian countries where there's like, I know in Japan they're very honor based.
Yeah, of sorts. Yes.
Even in places like Japan, it's not so much seen as a good thing to be so willing to sacrifice yourself. It's more or less just something like maybe as a punishment for something you did.
Right. Well, it's funny you mentioned that because like one of my favorite films ever is Seven Samurai, and I it's like 3 or something hours long, and I always watch it. But there's a scene where the archetypal uh, uh, master of his craft, the master swordsman character. Basically, he stops somebody from going after the bandits because he, according to him, he was looking to die. He was intending to sacrifice himself, and the master stopped him because he thinks that's not a very good thing to do. And he had his own problems with having lost his wife to the bandits and everything like that. So there's this whole thing with him, but he's a master of his craft, so he stops the guy who wants to sacrifice himself, and instead goes in himself to do a certain task, and he comes back alive and well, having killed off some bandits.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So yeah, in many honor places, it's like you only really there is no real honor in self-sacrifice per se.
Hmm.
It's more or less if you do something wrong, you're expected to sacrifice yourself.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Japan has had this. You have to kill yourself for making a mistake if you're a samurai, kind of a deal. So I thought that was pretty excessive, but it was what it was, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, there's a big difference between, like, let's say in samurai culture, where if you if you make a mistake or you dishonor your master or your clan, you're supposed to go out back and maybe stick a sword through your gut.
Hmm.
And there's a difference between that sort of thing and how in Christianity, where the act that's getting you to do to do that sort of self-sacrificial act, it's supposed to be a good act that leads you to it, where
Interesting.
you're like where the whole point is that you want to sacrifice yourself for the betterment of your clan, and in the sense that you've done nothing wrong to deserve it.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Whereas, at the very least, in the samurai culture, you've had to have done something wrong first.
Right.
Now it's excessive. It's excessive what they're demanding of you for a mistake that you did. But there's still supposed to be a bad action in front of it.
Right.
Whereas in Christianity, that's not the case. The bad action part on your part isn't really necessary.
Right. Okay. So let's go down the list here. So what is this? Dawning Silices? Am I saying that right?
Yeah, I think it's Dawning, yeah, Dawning Silcis. It's like basically a hair shirt. It was a garment worn underneath regular clothes, which allowed one to mortify their flesh.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, what you would do is you would wear these clothes that had barbed metal around them,
Mm.
and it would you would and Ivan the Terrible chose to actually be buried in one.
Right. Well, if you're dead,
And
who cares, right? No, you're not going to feel the discomfort.
well, yeah, but it's more of the symbolism behind it. Like it's supposed when you're doing it when you're buried, it's supposed to show how you lived your life, and it's supposed to show that you lived your life as such where you were willing to cause yourself immense pain.
Hmm.
So that's what it's supposed to symbolize. People would do this immediately after they maybe had done something bad. Like I remember one Irish, and like I says, one Irish aesthetic,
Aesthetic.
or like, yeah, he he lived a quiet life as a laborer after he struggled with alcoholism,
Mm-hmm.
and he basically, from what I heard, he wore this as well as a way of sort of showing showing that he's sorry for his life of alcoholism.
Mm.
And this would actually get so bad that some people actually would die from it.
Die from wearing the thing.
Yeah, because it would just cut into their skin, it would get infected and the like.
Right. Yeah, like it's designed for mortification of the flesh.
Yeah, and it's not just that, it's like they obviously didn't have the best medicine back then.
Mm.
So, it would cut into your flesh, and you would it would obviously become like gangrene, and you might have to lose a limb or so.
Mm.
And it would become infected, and some people would die from that.
Right.
And so that would be, and so people would wear this, and out, people would wear this in order to show that they're repenting for their ways.
Mm.
Um, the next one is like that comes after this.
Yeah.
It's become into a festival.
Yeah.
Um,
Flagellation festivals. Like looks like this one's talking about like several different customs. It looks like it talks about Americans, Spartans, Christians, Islam, all sorts.
yeah, basically it came about during the Black Death,
Hmm.
where people saw the plague as a divine judgment, and would they would say they were being punished. So in order to appease God, they would whip their bodies into bloody bits, their backs into bloody bits, in order to show that they were sorry and that they were repenting and trying to get this stuff to end. Yeah.
Right. I mean, yeah, it's kind of, jarring to think that, more, damaging yourself like this appeases anybody except those who wants to control them, right? Like, I know I'm being very cynical here, but
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that are people that are into that sort of thing, but
Right.
But even in those cases, you wouldn't be doing it out in public.
Right.
That's what it really is in these cases. I didn't know it. I didn't know the Spartans did it. Although it doesn't surprise me, Spartans were a very militaristic culture.
Right.
So it doesn't surprise me that they would engage in something like this, where they probably did it for very different reasons. Probably trying to strengthen their bodies, and they thought that by beating themselves into bits, that the people that survived that they would be the stronger warriors.
Right.
That's probably what I'm getting out of that, why they would do it. It's probably much different than why, let's say, Christians, even modern Christians, are doing it nowadays.
Right.
Or how even many Muslims are.
Right. Like some, I'm seeing here, most extreme participants use knife blades attached to chains to slice open the flesh of their backs. Thankfully, some Muslims prefer to honor the Prophet by donating blood to hospitals on the holiday instead.
Well, yeah, that does seem to be a much better and more reasonable thing. If you're going to, if you're going to take blood from yourself, it might as well someone get something out of it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and it's done in a way you can afford to as well. So.
Well, that I'm sure it won't be as likely to kill you that way.
Yeah.
And you won't have as much scars.
Oh yeah, to be sure. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting that mind alteration is next on the list. I would wonder if it's a bit of a more of a different category than self-torture, I suppose, and mortification of the flesh. But I suppose in a way it's kind of understandable, since you're trying to alter. So the premise behind it being is that you're altering your brain so that your senses probably don't work as they should. And ironically enough, a lot of people who do this consider this actually breaking away from the matrix, and and being in touch with the true reality.
Yeah. I would say it is a different category, because this isn't just exclusively a Christian thing. There are even some Buddhists, I believe, that do this sort of thing, where they the purpose is that our regular brains are dulled to the spiritual world. And in order to really see the spiritual world, you have to take these mind-altering substances in order to be awakened to it.
Right.
I know plenty of people myself that do this sort of thing, and it's not typically even for religious reasons. It's more spiritual.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah,
there can be torturous ways of doing this. Like if you're purposefully mixing up substances that you know that if you take them, it's not going to really cause you as much pleasure as it will cause you pain.
Yeah.
In the grand scheme, so I can't imagine it being torturous in some instances, purposefully torturous. Because most people that do this, they tend to in the long term they might feel bad side effects, but they're more doing it for the short term, like say high from it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like I hear people like getting these freakish acid trips, and like I mean, I don't know. It's like it's weird when it comes to people who do acid. It's like I don't know if you've done acid. I haven't myself, uh, but the idea is that all these people who have done acid, they're all like, oh, it changed my life forever, man. Like, so are you saying that your brain is so compromised that can't even trust a word you say?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like usually when people do the mind alteration stuff, it's more or less saying, oh, like, well, I'm doing this because I want to be in touch with the higher being,
Hmm.
and our regular brains are just not really in touch with this higher reality normally. So this is sort of a way of sort, let's say, cheating your way into it.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Like, the funny thing is, it's like, all these people who are doing things like getting high and stuff like that, saying that they're getting in tune with the universe and something like that. But they probably barely left their own home state, and they say they're in touch with the entire universe. You know?
Yeah. And this next one is body modification.
Yeah, we're back to the physical now.
Yeah. And oh, funny, this is a prehistoric Japanese culture.
Hmm.
Like they would remove their canine or incisor teeth after turning 13.
Yep.
Um, did you do that, bro?
No, I mean, I got my wisdom teeth taken out before college.
Mm. Um, yeah. So I believe like this comes like I mean tattoos are an ancient thing. People have been doing that for thousands of years.
Hmm. Right.
A lot of times it came down to like spirit, like religious sort of things. I know at least in I don't know if Christians hold to this more, but I know in Judaism you're not supposed to get tattoos
Hmm.
because like
Interesting.
we're seen like it's a pagan thing.
I see.
Although I guess it would also depend on the tattoo. Um,
Yes. So I'm not too privy on that one.
yeah, I remember this one too, where I've actually seen this on TV, where there are methods of flesh hanging where people would suspend themselves from hooks by their flesh.
Right. I think I've heard of that.
Um, there's even a church of body modification
Really.
where more ancient and modern body modification techniques are used, where they're basically suspending themselves by their skin on hooks like raw meat.
And you're saying that this is a church?
There is a church that does that specializes in it.
Huh. Do they do crucifixions too?
I don't know if they do that, but it wouldn't surprise me.
Right.
Um, I know this next one. It's another physical one where it's called a thigh possum or something.
Yeah,
So
Thaipusam, maybe? I'm just taking a stab at the pronunciation.
yeah, and it's basically a test of pain tolerance
Hmm.
where from the looks of it, it's where they stick a needle through your cheeks
Yeah. Yep.
and
By the way, people, I'm going to include the link to the article on the low bar when this video gets released, so you'll be able to see exactly what we're talking about.
yeah. So basically, they would, from the looks of it, they take a needle and they pierce it through your cheek like a shish kebab thing,
Hmm.
And apparently this is supposed to I don't know, it's supposed to test your pain tolerance.
Right.
And it does surprise me that women are actually involved in this, because like for the other ones, it was mostly men that are involved in it.
That's true.
Which, I mean, it doesn't surprise me that that's the case, because guys for some reason tend to be into self-harm in order to show themselves.
Yeah, that's true. So this is done in the same way across the genders or the sexes.
I would imagine so. I mean, some people, they say that like they wear sandals with the iron nails sticking from the sole, so it
Mm,
literally would, like, you have a nail sticking through your foot
I see.
and you walk through it like that. And well, I mean, well, on the bright side, they seem to be very hygienic about it, because they like to put disinfectants on it so it doesn't get infected.
Yeah, to say the least. Yeah. So this thing says that in honor of the Hindu god Murugan, who vanquished this great demon with a spear. So are the people the demons?
Yeah, that's sort of what I would be thinking about.
Yeah.
Worshippers walk with long metal skewers pierced through their cheeks.
Hmm.
And to
Yeah.
prevent speaking, like they apparently appends the lips and tongue into place.
Hmm.
I imagine many men want their wives to do this. Um, so that does seem sort of a weird train of logic. Basically, your god defeated a demon, and so you're going to as a thank you to the god for saving you from that demon, you're going to basically do to you what the god did to the demon.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I guess it's just more of that, self belittlement. By the way, I want to go a bit on a tangent about self belittlement. It's like this is one thing I recently read, or rather heard explained to me. This idea that in order to attain the kingdom of God, we must all be equally belittled. So it's sort of a way of saying that he who is first will be last, and he who is last will be first. Um, so yeah, there has always been this love affair with self belittlement. Would that be a more accurate way to say it than self victimization, or do you think victimization is more apt?
I mean, either one could work. I mean, it can be like, it could be a form of belittlement, but I think many people that do this sort of stuff, they think high of themselves because they think they're being closer to their deity, or they're at least participating in something that has significance.
Sure, right. College hazing has got nothing on this.
Yeah, pretty much it doesn't.
Yeah. All right. Number 4, bullet ant gloves.
Sounds lovely.
Yep. Good grief. Yeah.
See,
Mhm.
you read it more.
Yeah, sure. It's where are bullet ants from? So it says the Amazon.
Yeah, basically this tribe of people, they have their young men go through an agonizing ceremony to show that they reach manhood, in order
Mhm.
to show that they have a high pain tolerance.
Right. Yeah. If if you're an adult human female, then you're a woman, but you got to do all this crap to be a man here.
Yeah, basically they put all these bullet ants into a glove, and you have to wear these gloves for 10 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Uh,
actually think I've heard of something like this before.
and the ensuing pain is apparently 30 times worse than the worst wasp stings.
Hmm. And you got to do it 20 times in a row.
Yeah. So it, I mean, if that's what it takes to be a man, then I'm pretty fine being a child.
Yeah. I wonder if this is where the transgender people get it wrong. They don't want to be a man, so they become a woman. Well, might as well just be, just not grow up, go to Neverland, and be Peter Pan. And I'm not even saying, I'm not the anti Peter Pan guy here. I'm the proponent of the poor archetype, for crying out loud. But it's like, I think this is a sensible sentiment to have, is to be this Peter Pan that everybody says you shouldn't be.
Yeah, and 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 it also says that some boys even die from this
Well, I guess
because
that's one way to be a man, right? To die.
multiple consecutive stings can be fatal.
Yeah,
Well,
it seems like it's just like weeding out the useless, the men that they consider useless.
that, and I think it's to say, well, I mean, I guess if you die, that means you're not a real man.
Hmm.
Which, I mean, that's one way of looking at it. I would think another way of looking at it is that you're human and your biology is saying, hey, you shouldn't really be taking these things. It might kill you.
Yep. Yeah, the
Um,
sentiment has not gone away from our Western culture. We circumcise and we accept that death is a part of the thing. We pretend we're, shocked that it happens. We pretend we don't know why this happens, but we know it happens, and yet we still do it. It's kind of like it is what it is kind of a thing. That's the attitude these people have.
uh, so this next one is one I'm very familiar with. It's self-immolation, where basically a guy sets himself on fire.
Hmm.
A person the picture that they're showing is of a Buddhist monk that did it as a political protest sort of thing against
Yeah.
government that was apparently oppressing the Buddhists.
Hmm.
Um, so I know a guy that actually did this because of child support, where he
You,
wanted
you
to send.
you personally knew him, or?
I didn't personally know him, but I heard about it.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah. I think I know who you're talking about.
This guy, he was being charged so much with child support that he couldn't live anymore on it.
Hmm.
And so, in order to make a political statement, he set himself on fire
Hmm.
outside like a courtyard.
Yeah, I did hear about that.
Which that's a way of setting a message.
Hmm.
But I mean, if I was going to go that far, I would think at that point I would go from something more quick. And what's even sadder about it is that the guy that did that, like, he was accused of abusing the woman. He says, "Oh, he self-immolated himself in order to abuse the woman again." I'm like,
Okay.
if
Yeah.
a guy wants to abuse a woman, that he's not going to harm himself like that.
Right. Yeah.
Um, and apparently this became like sort of a meme or something, like something popular, because about, I think, like more than 80 Buddhists ended up doing it in like groups.
Right. So we're back to the Buddhist thing.
Yeah, so so it's always been sort of a political strategy.
Mm.
So I mean, I guess it's different than the whole religious thing, because this is not really religious as it is just a political statement.
Yeah, that's true.
Now, this is one that you know about a lot: genital mutilation.
Oh yeah, I've talked about this so many times on this channel. It's like one of the biggest things in terms of my men's issues advocacy, as you all know.
Mhm.
But
So,
this article talks about some specific kinds, of course. I mean, I don't think this article really processes routine infant circumcision as part of this at all, unless I'm wrong.
um, but yeah, um, for some Aboriginal children, becoming an adult in the eyes of tribal society involves painful rituals in which the genitals are modified. Sometimes this comes from circumcision or cuts to the clitoris. Other times, a sharp stone is used to split open the underside of the penis.
Right. By the way, so this is a good time to talk to have a comment from my own subscribe star. This is from Peter Wright. He actually directly references the next paragraph. In one of the worst examples, a boy being initiated was expected to repeatedly hit his penis with a heavy rock until it was bruised and bloody. According to the source, his incisors were also to be knocked out of his mouth while his elders exchanged ancient religious secrets with him in return. Thank goodness the feminists and traditionalists have not discovered this one yet. If they had, they'd quickly find a medical rationale for why it was helpful, quote unquote, helpful to males and proceeded to mandate every male having his penis pulverized with a big rock. Yeah, absolutely right. Thank you for that comment, Peter.
I love Peter. Yeah, it's a good thing that feminists haven't gotten their hands on this sort of thing, or they would definitely. This does seem like something that would what they would do. Oh, but just remember though, it's the FGM that's the real attack.
Oh yeah,
Going.
it's yeah. Well, yeah. Up until this point, anyway, it's been the real attack. Now it's transitioning teenagers.
Well, I mean, I've always said that. I mean, if you're a boy, like if you are, I'm trying to think. If you're a male to female transitioner, I mean, on one hand, do you sort of? I've always made this joke. I said, do you see circumcision as sort of as just a partial transition?
Yeah, yeah. I saw you make that comment on Twitter.
Yeah. So I mean, so you said, I would be mad at my parents for circumcising me, but I'm just going to get the whole thing cut off anyway. In a way, they just gave me a partial transition.
Right. One thing that I'm actually kind of curious about is I don't think anyone's done any studies of this, but I'm actually wondering if uh, male to females are generally. I wonder what the rate is like, or any correlation between whether they've been circumcised at infancy or not. Because I don't know how much this happens worldwide compared to in the United States, say, where it's more sensationalized. But I wonder if there's any kind of correlation as such, or maybe none.
Yeah, I mean, I know for the West, circumcision became somewhat popular, more popular after like the World Wars,
Right.
and because basically what people found out was that like some Jewish soldiers, they didn't get the dick diseases as much as like the other soldiers, and they connected that to circumcision.
Mm.
And I've always said that even if that were, if that's completely true, I mean that would only be justification for saying, hey, telling soldiers, hey, if you're going to be sent out to these deserts, we would strongly recommend you do circumcision. But it wouldn't be a recommendation for doing this to little boys from when they're born.
Well, yeah, to be sure, I won't capitulate to any kind of justification on that basis at all myself. So,
Yeah, so I mean, even if it were granted that, let's say, soldiers that had circumcision done to them, and they were sent to these desert-like environments, and they happened to do better. I mean, at best, that would only be a justification for maybe recommending it to soldiers that are going out into the Middle East, but it wouldn't be a justification for doing it to little boys.
yeah, to be true, you know, uh, I wonder if they more readily recommend it to the guys because to the soldiers because they're being sent to die anyway.
Oh yeah, too. I mean, you wouldn't want to die and have a dick disease.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
Now, the last one is
Well, before we go to the last one, why don't we talk about the last paragraph here because I think it's kind of important.
yeah.
Sure. So another report described the process of bifurcating the penis. After making an incision, a rod is inserted into the urethra, and a long cut is made from the head of the penis to the top of the scrotum. As a result, the boy will now have to crouch in order to urinate or ejaculate properly. Anthropologist Barbara Meyerhoff famously noted that this specific ritual makes the male genitalia superficially resemble that of a menstruating woman's. The pain experienced is also likened to menstrual or birth pains, supposedly giving boys more understanding of the reproduction and the cycle of life. So this is the part that really pisses me off because um, this is it's basically trying to match what they think is the downtrodden. Like they say that woman is the downtrodden sex, and it appears to be no different in this kind of tribal situation. And so we need to correct and punish the male so they feel the same thing.
Yeah, basically, from what I'm getting from that is it's saying, oh, well, men are the defective ones here, and so we need to make them more like the women here by putting
Well,
this rod in.
well, I have an alternate take to that one. It seems like it's like they pity women because they're the defective ones, so the men must become defective to match them. Maybe that's an alternate take.
That could be true as well.
Yeah.
Um, but I think it is sort of getting how they want this sort of equality in the genitals between the two of them.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, one thing that pissed me off is when Jordan Peterson says that the blood from circumcision is the equivalent of menstruation in women. It's basically the same kind of thing. I'm paraphrasing here, but that's what he said, and that kind of made me lose it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
just just cut baby boy dicks in order so the women can be happy.
right. So they can all feel equal and stuff.
Yeah. Um. So yeah, that's pretty garbage reasoning in my opinion.
Hmm.
Now this one I've actually have heard of this. This is self mummification.
Self mummification.
This is actually from Japan and the Buddhist. In this, it's a 10-year long process where priests would slowly cause their own bodies to decrepify into to basically into husk.
Even though they're actually living.
Yeah, and the point is they eventually kill themselves, but it's supposed to be over a short period of time. I mean, it's supposed to be over this long period of time.
Right. Well.
It was divided into like 3 1,000-day periods.
Hmm.
So basically, like 3 or 4 years or whatever.
Right. It looks
And
like calling it physical impurities that impede passage into nirvana. So they don't even want to take their own semblance of flesh and blood into the afterlife here.
yeah, basically, the priests eat only nuts and grains. With ice cold water.
Hmm.
And then they would their after that their diet would consist of only bark and pine roots.
Right.
Eventually, this is basically just starving themselves.
Exactly. And it really bugs me when people push this kind of some weird variety of vegetarian or something like that kind of push this kind of diet on us in our modern civilization. You know, it's like it's basically meant to mortify the flesh. In fact, I'm pretty sure that this is what's happening with the recent push to eat bugs and stuff.
Well, I mean, the thing is I'm not as like gung ho against the whole bug eating thing. I mean, personally, I wouldn't do it myself,
Well,
but
I mean, I get that other cultures in the world have done this to the extent that they do, right? Like
yeah,
I'm not for the pushing against it and stuff like that, uh, but
for
here's the thing: I eat shrimp, and I love crab, and I love seafood in general. So I don't know what that says about me, but you know,
such Japanese.
Yeah, but
Uh,
I don't know, I'm just thrilled by seafood, and it contains the same chitin, I think it's pronounced chitin, that the bugs are supposed to consist of. But I'm in reasonably good health.
yeah. Well, I mean, in some cultures, like in Mexico, they eat grasshoppers.
Hmm.
And I mean, that's why I'm not so much against it per se. I mean, I wouldn't do it. But I'm not so much gung ho against it.
I get what you're saying.
I think it's because, like, the way like we eat cows here,
Hmm.
you know, like I'm imagining that in Hindu places they feel like the same way about how we eat cows, how we feel about eating bugs.
That's true.
So I mean, I'm not, I think it's more of an each to their own sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, they've kind of everyone's
Like,
found their own normal, I suppose.
yeah. So that's why I'm not as like gung ho against it. I think it's more of a each to their own. I personally wouldn't do it.
Yeah, I get what you mean.
I remember I used to be so gung ho against eating shark meat.
Have you had
Uh,
shark meat?
oh yeah, I've had it plenty of times now.
I've had shark soup once in some Chinatown in Japan. We were out with family, friends, and whatnot, and I don't know. I don't remember the taste, but it was this. It was shark soup, and I had some of it.
I think some of it's cruel though, like
Eh,
fin soup,
shark
because
fin soup?
yeah, where they'll like what they'll do sometimes is they'll cut off the fin of the shark and throw it back in the water.
Ah, that's not good. Yeah,
Yeah, that's what I think is cruel. I mean,
yeah,
if you're already going through all the effort to catch the shark, you might as well kill it. Don't just cut
yeah.
it off and throw it in the water to suffer.
That's true. Yeah, right.
So I mean, my brother-in-law, he's from Puerto Rico.
Hmm.
Uh, They have a big fishing sort of culture there, and he's apparently just really good at catching sharks.
Okay.
And he caught one shark, and he asked me if I wanted to try it. And I was against it at first, but I said, "All right, just give me like a slice of it." And he cooked it up and everything, gave it to me, and I said, doesn't taste that bad.
Right.
It has more of a like if you go to the grocery store and you get like fillet of fish,
Hmm.
that's sort of how it tastes like.
I see.
It has more of a like. I mean, it all depends on really how you cook it as well.
I see.
If you if you if you if you cook it and bread it good enough, you can't really taste the fish in it.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm not really that gun ho against it because I know some people, like a lot of people do eat bugs to some extent. I think that if this were just saying, hey, maybe you should broaden your horizons, sort of thing, and just try it for that reason, then yeah. But that's usually not what they're going for when they're pushing the bugs onto people. They're more saying, hey, eat bugs or you're going to destroy the environment.
Yeah. That's it. Yeah. Yeah, and
So
I get what you're saying about the gung ho thing. Yeah.
yeah, if it were more just saying, hey, other cultures try this, maybe you should as well for eating. Um,
Yeah.
so I wouldn't have as much of a big deal about that sort of thing if you're just saying, hey, maybe you should open your mind to what other cultures do.
Right. Yeah. Well, that plus the fact that I've heard that there's there's unchecked parasites and the kind of things that they're trying to force us to eat.
Oh yeah, that too.
Yeah.
So I mean, if it were just about a matter of like sharing what other cultures do, I wouldn't care that
Yeah.
much.
That makes sense.
But it's more the climate hysteria that goes along with it
Hmm. Right.
that makes it bad.
That's true.
I mean, it would be equally as bad if, like, let's say hypothetically, they had said, "Hey, maybe you should eat this sort of chickens, like chicken sandwiches, in order to save the environment." It wouldn't be so much that I'd be against eating the chicken sandwich. It'd be more against the message that's being pushed for eating the
Yeah.
chicken sandwich.
Right. Yeah. We've kind of diverged into this weird discussion about food when we're talking about self modification.
Yeah, but I mean, that's sort
It's
of
my fault.
Oh, it's fine, but that's sort of how the self mummification does come about, because you're changing your diet in order to essentially hollow yourself out.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, after, like, the bottom paragraph, it says, after this stage, the priests were placed in a stone tomb with a tube for air and a loud bell to signal to others they were still alive. And when the bell stopped ringing, the tomb was sealed. And basically, after all this, the priest is dead,
Mm-hmm.
and and apparently from the way they did the body, it would mimic that they were like self mummified.
Yeah.
I believe one priest did this so well that they actually encased him in gold and made him into like a Buddhist statue, and they found out recently that there was actually a mummy inside the statue.
Uh-huh.
So apparently that's how good one guy did it.
Wow.
So basically the entire process is just to basically hollow yourself out into being like looking like a mummy, and then eventually you die from that.
Right. Yeah.
And you'd be entombed and all that stuff. So that's the end of the article from what I can see.
Yeah, that looks to be the end. Like here's the thing, it's like we're there's this preoccupation with death above all of this that disturbs me in its association with enlightenment. Like we talk about this forsaking of flesh, forsaking of this world, this obsession of becoming not of this world and things not of this world, that it fails to sell me some of the more prevalent religious ideas, I think,
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
yeah, it makes sense perfectly. Um, I think it is more about like how people are willing to go out of their way to do what they think is socially the right thing, even though it's doing them great harm.
Hmm.
It's not very individualistic focused.
Well, it's not. It's a combination of societal approval and approval from the divine. You know, and
Yeah.
speaking of approval from the divine, that's the basis where a lot of sexual abstinence comes from. It's this kind of idea of uh, abstaining from uh, desires, the sexual desires, and that way you become more close to God. If you can see this prominently in certain, in priesthoods and in nunneries and other things.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we've been talking for like an hour and 20 minutes now, really.
Oh yeah. We were planning on an hour, but we been kind of immersed in this thing. We went 20 over.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think we made our point here. I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thanks a lot, Brass.
Thanks a lot, Vernon.
Right. Talk to you some other time. Thanks for joining me tonight. I hope you guys enjoyed it.
All right. See you later, guys.
All right. Bye bye.